Hello, everyone. I see a lot of people trickling in, so we can give it another minute before we officially get started.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Vemos que hay gente que se nos está uniendo todavía, así que vamos a esperar unos minutos más. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Just woke up from a nap not too long ago.
I also took a nap earlier today.
I had a big dog park.
Tired you out too?
Oh, don't you know? Don't you know? Between that and what else? The budget hearing. Very interesting event. My favorite time of year, though. It's almost like Christmas. Who else
The
is on
budget
here?
hearing.
No, literally, I really do like budget hearings.
I don't know if I can say the same, but they are interesting.
We have somebody from Caltrans here. Great. Hey, Ivanka.
Hello, everyone.
Long time no see.
Yeah, good comments on budget. I wasn't on budget today. I was on yesterday. So I always appreciate your comments.
Oh, you would have loved today. Literally, you would have loved today. My comment from the dog park was epic. And unfortunately, I accidentally called Miguel Arias a knucklehead today.
Oh, no.
No, it's okay. We're cool.
Thank you for sharing a little bit about your experience at the budget presentation. Let's see. I see.
And to find out more details of my comments from the dog park, I would say attend the police budget hearings because it's going to be cray. It's good. It's going to be epic.
Okay. I'll try to make it. Okay. I see Ryan. Hello. Ivanka. See you here too. Are we missing anybody from the Air District team?
Oh, and I see Estella and Isabel are here. Good evening, ladies. And even Vanessa, she had an excellent public comment. Very succinct, beautifully stated.
It was recorded, right?
Oh yeah. Hers was so my comment involved the word knucklehead. Hers was very professionally done.
Okay, well, I think we can get started for the evening. I see a bunch of people have trickled in. So welcome to our 46th Steering Committee meeting for South Central Fresno. My name is Liz Lev, and I am one of the facilitators from Harder & Company. I am joined here tonight by a few of my colleagues. We have our usual Jem and Amy here, and we also have Hema, who recently joined our team. As usual, we will start with some opening remarks from Ryan and our community co-host Ivanka. But before we jump into the agenda and opening remarks, I would like to take this time to walk us through some of our usual housekeeping items. And I think I will pass it off to our interpretation team to walk us through these.
Thank you, Liz. Muy buenas tardes a todos y muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros en esta nueva reunión del comité directivo. Como ustedes saben, en estas reuniones hay servicio de interpretación al español. En unos momentos se va a iniciar esa función y van a encontrar el icono de interpretación en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Van a ver un globo, un mundo. Por favor, le dan clic y seleccionan el español como su idioma. De la misma forma, si están comunicándose a través de una tableta o un teléfono iPhone, pueden seleccionar el menú de los 3 puntos, seleccionan interpretación idiomática y ahí escogen el español como su idioma. Gracias. Okay, we can start interpretation function, please.
Thank you. Let me, oops. Okay. Looks like our interpretation is on. Is anybody having any trouble getting into the right channel? Okay, and I actually should record. Okay. So now that everyone is in their interpretation channel, we'll move on to our renaming conventions. So on my screen, you're seeing the typical renaming conventions, which is important for our attendance tracking and stipend distribution process. We do have a few members of the facilitation team who are here, along with people from the Air District who are working behind the scenes to help with that renaming and any other technical difficulties that you might be having. So please do feel free to reach out to any one of us if you're having trouble at any point throughout the meeting. So here, this is another reminder about those renaming conventions. If you are not a member of the CSC, please write your organization name in your Zoom name so we have an idea of who's here. And if you are a member of the public, we also ask that you put a little P in front of your name. So for our virtual meeting etiquette, please, as usual, make sure to stay unmuted unless you are speaking. If you are joining by the phone, you can press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. If you have a question or any thoughts that you would like to share, we ask that you raise your Zoom hand. If you're on the phone and would like to participate and speak, you can raise your hand using *9. And another reminder that residents who are in the stipend program should stay on for at least 75% of the meeting, which is 90 minutes of our 2 hours together. So on this slide, this is a review of the group agreements. So everyone here has agreed to help achieve the meeting goals by focusing on solutions, opportunities, and productive dialogue. We want to make sure that we're mindful of creating space for everyone here to participate. We also ask for everyone to be kind and respectful, knowing that it's okay to disagree, and we probably will disagree at times. We just ask that you do it with respect and empathy. In these meetings, we agreed to stay on point and on time, so please try to keep your comments brief so everyone can have a chance to participate. We do recognize the urgency and importance of these conversations and definitely don't want to cut them short. And we also do want to be respectful of everyone's time here. So our team will be trying to keep track of time as best we can and just point out when we might be running a little late. And in that case, what we'll do is check in with you all about whether you would like to continue that conversation tonight and maybe go over our time, or whether you would prefer to continue that conversation at a future meeting. So next, we agreed to attack the problem and not the person. And finally, we agreed to seek common ground. So here's the agenda for this evening. We'll start by reviewing the action item tracker as usual. Then at 5:45, we will move on to the heavy duty truck idling and parking presentation. Next at 6:25, we'll move on to the incentive measure funding follow-up. Then at 6:45, we'll move on to standing updates. And then we'll start to wrap up around 7:20 and then transition to public comment. I'd also just like to take a moment to continue the practice that Eric and Jem started for us a few months ago, and take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territories that California now occupies. Land acknowledgements are important as they serve to develop awareness of colonialism in the past and the present, And we know that colonialism still has a major impact on many people today. So we will continue to incorporate these acknowledgements moving forward to recognize ancestral territories and that the First Nations are the traditional and rightful stewards of the land that we now occupy. So while I was born and raised in California, I am actually living in Central Oregon, which is on the traditional territory of the Northern Paiute, Wasco, and the Warm Springs tribes. My colleagues Jem and Amy are in San Diego right now. They are on unceded territory of the Kumeyaay. My colleague Hema is currently in Oakland, which is the ancestral and unceded land of the Cocheño-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. And for those who are residing in Fresno, you are on the traditional homeland of the Yakuts, who were the only residents of that area until the mid-1800s when the American settlers came. And we recognize that simple land acknowledgements are not enough, and we all have to take real actions towards addressing these past injustices. And so with that, we want to just honor the land itself and honor those who have been and those who remain stewards of this land for generations to come. And I will stop sharing my screen. Okay. Thank you everyone for holding that space. I will now transition us to some brief opening remarks from the Air District and from our co-host Ivanka. So Ryan, would you like to get us started with some opening remarks?
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief. Happy to be here tonight with all of you and really appreciate Ivanka working with us in her co-lead role. I hope she's feeling better. Just kind of a show of her commitment to this ongoing effort, even though she wasn't feeling the best, she did make the time and brought some really great suggestions on things that would help improve the discussions for tonight. And so I just really want to thank her and look forward to talking about several issues and really getting some direction and hopefully moving forward some items tonight. I know that's definitely something that we've been hearing from all of you and a desire to do. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. And thanks, Liz, for the Native American land acknowledgement. That's really cool. It's a good reminder to know exactly whose land we're standing on. My name's Ivanka Saunders. I've been part of working the CSC with the CSC for a while now. If we could, Liz, go back to the agenda screen. To the CSC members, does that agenda look good for tonight's discussion? Or is there anything that needs to be bumped up, or that is anything that is in the realm of what we're working on that is not on, that's really pertinent, or something we should all know about because there's some other kind of deadline coming up at some other type of meeting? We know that that happens a lot. I see Lisa's hand up.
Oh, yeah, I really have a quick question. Are we going to hear from Caltrans tonight? And can we hear from them earlier in the evening versus later? Because they tend not to stick around very long. And also too, I forgot the other thing, but I wanted to hear from Caltrans earlier than later. Thank you.
Yes, so we do have an update from Caltrans. They will be staying until the end. They are on to give us an update during those standing updates at 6:45. Ivanka, you can take over again.
All righty. I think for the next item on the agenda is just review of any action items on the tracker list. We want to go over those.
Yeah, so I think now we'll pass it to Steph.
Yeah, thanks so much, Liz, and good evening, everyone. I know we do this a lot, but again, this is just a routine check-in of action items that came out of our last meeting or previous meetings. And going to go ahead and share my screen and go over the ones that came out of our May meeting. Again, this document is posted on our website and broken up into ones that are still in progress and ones that are completed. And a couple that I just wanted to highlight. One of them, the Air District and Facilitation Team will clarify the process for proposing agenda items. And really the district is open to receiving agenda items at any time, and that includes during CSC and agenda setting meetings. You're welcome to email ab617@valleyair.org, and also directly sharing any items with district or facilitation staff to allow for equitable distribution and language access of materials, though it is preferred that agenda items are confirmed 1 week prior to the CSC meeting so we can get materials out. Another item, the Air District, this was related to a CERP incentive measure presentation we had in the last meeting, but the Air District will send CSC research about the health impacts of natural gas fireplaces. And so the district is working on this and will share research with the CSC after tonight's meeting. Another item that came from May, the Air District will consider the CSC request to hire a chief EJ officer, so environmental justice officer. If no, the Air District will present an explanation of why. So the response to this, as discussed during the May CSC meeting, the district does have an executive level officer over AB 617, which includes environmental justice and community outreach efforts. And finally, also from the May meeting, CSC is invited to submit their feedback to the upcoming participatory budgeting survey. And so we did have a couple months back a budget presentation. And so Harder & Company is finalizing, kind of working with the community co-host from that presentation to send this survey out to the CSC. And this survey will be used to kind of inform any future budget discussions that we have. And we do have a handful of pending items, many of which are related to a really great stationary source series that's been going on. And so as we kind of bring up a future stationary source presentation, we'll work to incorporate that feedback into that presentation. And I'll go ahead and move over to some of our completed items. And this came out of the May meeting as well. CARB will check with other AB 617 CSCs outside of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District to see where they are with residential air filtration. And so CARB did get back to us and shared that there are 6 other AB 617 communities that are working on residential air filtration programs. They're all kind of at various stages, whether having submitted a project plan or still working on it with a subcommittee on it. And so for additional information, you can click this link and you can actually see a whole list of not just residential school air filtration, but they also included kind of progress on it includes residential air filtration and also school air filtration. And those are the items I have from tonight. Does anyone have any questions?
Stephanie, I do have a question on this last one for the residential air filtration. For us, for Fresno, is that going to be any more details included in our updates?
Yeah, and so that's actually a really great point, Ivanka. I wanted to also add, so this item will kind of tie in pretty nicely to our presentation, a follow-up conversation that we're having regarding a few of the CERP incentive measures we discussed at the last meeting. Thank you.
Perfect.
Pass it back to Liz.
Thank you. So I will transition us to our next agenda item. I'm sorry if you can hear my cat right now. She's hungry. So there are a lot of moving pieces around implementation, and the subcommittees and Air District would like to keep you all, the committee, informed about the progress being made with these CERP measures. So we will first start out, I think, with some framing from our co-host Ivanka to provide some context on the heavy-duty truck idling and parking portion of the agenda, and present along with CARB staff and some contributions from the city of Fresno. We'll open it up for discussion following this brief presentation, but of course, feel free to raise your hand or write your question in the chat if you have any questions or comments as we go.
Hey, Liz, real quick, we'll also be sharing on that item as well.
Great, so the Air District will also be sharing. So I think, Ivanka, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, this item really just naturally occurred out of just a question that I had sent out to Brian, and it's something that I see as a resident living in South Central, that it's just like we're doing our work on the policy end of sitting here at the 617 meetings, but how is that really transferring over into the impacts or lack thereof of changes that we're seeing in the community? So I am in Southwest Fresno within the 617 boundary, and this is an example that we want to be able to use as kind of a conversation starter of what other residents are also seeing within the 617 area. As we see the city increase with industrial development and e-commerce is on the rise, this community in Southwest Fresno and Elm and Jensen Avenue are seeing a lot more trucks that are just starting to park in the community. And while some of these truck drivers may be residents that are living in the area, they still have to abide by certain laws. So what are those laws? So it's not even that the truck was necessarily on my street involving my house, but there's an elderly woman who is an original neighbor from this area since the 50s. And when she backs out her little car, she can't even get a clear vision of what is she backing out into on Jensen Avenue, because there's complete blockage. And I just knew, I'm like, there's something wrong here. We know that there's a certain amount of time, like distance that a truck can or cannot be parked in front of a house. And so that was really what sparked the conversation that through email I had asked Brian, like, what are the rules at the state level that involve necessarily those rules that get passed down to CHP, because they are our state police, and that is a, not a stationary source, but a moving source. And then how is that enforcement trickle down or pass over into local ordinances? And I think that's something that this group should be more aware of, because those of us that are residents living in the area probably need a better sense of when we're seeing it, what exactly are we seeing that is being broken, what rules are being broken, versus what are the rights of the residents that I could even pass over to this elderly woman that lives here. Because right now I'm like, yeah, I can do Fresco, but it's going to be gone. It's not going to be sitting there by the time the Fresco complaints get actually processed. And it is concerning whether it's a concern of the truck sitting there to idle, or if it's a concern that sometimes the trucks are bringing in the refrigeration unit. So even if the truck is off, the refrigeration unit is still going. So that is what sparked this agenda item. And I'll stop there, because even though I've lived here for some time, I had to stop and ask myself, what would I do in this situation? Fresco is too slow. And while I see Fresno police in the area, it is a heavy duty truck. So does that involve CHP? Those were the questions that I really kind of had to begin as the conversation with Brian. And I guess from the steering committee members, the other piece of this was Jensen and Elm Avenue are part of the main truck routes. So right where this truck is parked, there is a sign with the letter T that says route. So he's thinking, if he doesn't know the ordinances, he's thinking, well, I see that sign, it's okay for me to be here because it's a truck route, but it's a truck route that's going right through the community. So I know that it's possibly let this be kind of a space where if you're seeing that same type of questionable parking or driving, I thought of Lilia because I know she's reported it to us many times about the Amazon vans that are over on Cedar. So this is more than just a heavy duty truck. It's the traffic that is impounding and impacting the community that are surrounded by this industrial developments as they grow. So I'll stop there and pass it over to you, Brian.
Cool. Thanks, Yvonne. Oh, actually, does Lisa have a question?
Actually, I have a couple of suggestions to cure the problem. First off,
Would you like to maybe save the comments until after the presentation?
No.
Okay.
Very simple. Scott can go out there and paint the curbs where she has a wider where she has a wider angle that she could actually see coming out. And so she'll lose part of her parking in front of her home. I live out by City College, and we always have, pre-COVID, you know, the first 3-4 weeks, very difficult to get out of my driveway because of the college kids. And some of the neighborhoods actually went to the city to put up signs that only the residents could park there. That's another option as well, except the citizens have to come up, the residents have to come up with signatures from the owners of the property to allow that to occur, and $2,000 for the signs. However, in this case, the city may be able to waive all that and then pay for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That is helpful information.
Cool. Well, thanks. That seems like a very common sense, straightforward solution, which Lisa offers a lot of them up during these calls. So thank you. So I am actually going to turn over to Eric Bissinger, who is in our enforcement division at CAR, to start out the presentation. And so I'll be sharing the screen, but Eric, you can go ahead and just guide me through the slides.
Thanks, Brian. Can you hear me okay? Okay, yeah, hi. I'm Eric Bissinger. I'm with CAR's Enforcement Division in the Community Outreach section. And so I'm here today to talk about the heavy-duty diesel truck idling. And so the purpose of the commercial idling vehicle measure is to reduce public exposure to particulate matter and other air contaminants by establishing idling restrictions and limitations for heavy-duty diesel-fueled commercial motor vehicles. So next slide. The certified clean idle sticker shown here is for vehicles that use an engine that has been certified to an optimal NOx idling emission standard. In other words, the vehicle is equipped with an engine that has reduced NOx emissions. And the stickers, they're usually located on the truck's driver's side door or on the front hood. And stickers can only be acquired by the engine manufacturers and truck dealerships. So an average truck owner cannot just apply for these stickers. You have to go through the manufacturer. And a certified clean idle sticker allows a heavy-duty diesel truck to idle for more than 5 minutes in unrestricted areas. So a restricted area includes housing units, schools, hotels, motels, hospitals, senior care facilities, and child care facilities. And trucks with certified clean idle stickers are only allowed to idle within 100 feet of these restricted areas for no more than 5 minutes. Okay, next slide. The idling rule requires drivers of diesel-fueled commercial vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 10,000 pounds to not idle the engine longer than 5 minutes at any location. So it is legal to idle for 5 minutes. And trucks with certified clean idle stickers can idle unrestricted, but that's only if they are within 100 feet of the sensitive receptors that I just spoke about. There are other exemptions to the idling rule, such as idling in adverse weather condition, while stuck in traffic, under emergency conditions, during a mechanical failure, and certain kinds of truck inspections. Also, emergency, military, and armored vehicles are exempt from the rule. So the regulation does not apply to diesel-powered cars or privately owned pickup trucks. So if you see a truck illegally idling, what should you do? I'm suggesting for the quickest response, when residents see a truck idling, I suggest contacting the Air District complaint line. The Air District has the authority to enforce the idling regulation, and they can respond quickly. Remember, when reporting an illegal idling vehicle, be sure to provide the date and the time, the location, the license plate number, company name, and any other information you can gather safely. So, you know, learning of this growing community concern, the CARB enforcement team is committed to investigating Elman Jensen location with increased frequency and urgency. CARB enforcement, in South Central Fresno has consistently, when we do idling investigations, we've seen about 95%, above 95% compliance rates. So so learning of these new, we understand that we may be missing some specific locations, and it's conversations like these that really help us improve our investigations and get us out there. So yeah, and also we do have some no idling signs that meet Caltrans specifications, and we can provide them to the community. And so next slide. And I hope that helps, and I'm open to answer any questions.
Thanks, Eric. Just to confirm, so using my senior citizen neighbor, who when she backs out, she takes the risk of running into that truck when she goes to pull forward because he's that close to the end of her driveway. So maybe she's 10 feet away from the end of her driveway. So technically from the end of her driveway or from the front door of her house should be the end of 100 feet away from her if he has a clean sticker. Correct?
Yeah, the property line, yeah.
And that would only be for 5 minutes idling.
Yeah, being that close to a house, yeah, you'd get to go for 5 minutes max.
Okay. So does that kind of end where CARB's enforcement regulations, do they stop there when it comes to idling versus parking with the engines off?
Yeah, that's the authority we have, yeah.
It stops at that point, right? The idling point, is that correct in understanding? Okay.
Yeah, like I don't have any authority over parking.
Okay. I see Naomi's hand up.
Yes. Hi, Eric. Good to
Hi,
see you.
Naomi. Good to see you.
So I'm sorry. Take this as a constructive criticism. While ralentí is like a proper translation of no idling, nobody who speaks Spanish in California that comes from the majority Latin America knows what that is. This is a conversation that I already had with the Air District, and friendly suggested that they did actually change. So there's not going to be one word for it. You might need a couple of, maybe several words, and maybe the Air District can share some of the language that they had changed in their materials. But ralentí, if you don't believe me, you can just ask all our Spanish speakers here. Nobody would understand what ralentí means. So if you want these materials to be more culturally appropriate, there has to have important terms that people can relate and understand.
Yeah, I mean, the signs are bilingual, and I think our fact sheets on our website I can supply are bilingual.
Yeah, but the point is ralentí, even if you have it there, it's not a term that anybody would understand.
Yeah, I got, I mean, it's like a little translation, but it's nonsensical. So I'll touch base with Air District staff, and I'll make sure we get that to our translators. Yeah.
And I did look into the TRUs and the fact that they're idling, but technically they're not really idling. They are actually working. They're doing their job, which is to keep the materials cold. And so whatever they're transporting to keep it cold. And there's really little restrictions as far as being close to a home or a school or receptors. Yeah, I'm sorry, the refrigerated trailers.
Lisa, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we can solve this problem for this elderly woman. I have a 91-year-old neighbor who still drives, which I find he drives better than me. He's had less accidents than me in the last 24 years that I've known him. That's how good of a driver he is. And, I know we talked about getting red striping in front of our duplex that I live in. So I'm trying to figure out what is a solution for this elderly lady. Because if Ivanka goes back to her and says, well, this is what it is, it doesn't solve her problem and does not improve her quality of life. So my suggestion to the state and to the Air District, would you be willing to support possibly and encouraging the city to come out and look at this issue and maybe paint her curbs red so she has a clearer view backing out so she doesn't get hit? Because, you know, as we get older, and if we get into car accidents, we don't heal that fast anymore out of a matter of safety for this individual. Carb, Air District, what do you think? Would you support something along that line?
Well, I see Scott's hand is raised, Lisa. So I think that's one of the nice things about AB 617, where we are pulling the different agencies, and so you know, they could speak directly to some of the things that we're talking about here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Scott Mosier, Public Works Department. So we have a few, quite a few tools at our disposal. I'm not familiar with the specific address, but we've dealt with dozens and dozens of similar situations. So let's see, as Lisa had mentioned, yes, one option would be if there is a site distance issue, the city, yes, we can look at that. And in similar situations, we have painted some section of red curb. That's commonly done near intersections. It could occur near a driveway if there's a problem. But I did want to highlight, you know, the red curb. I mean, that solution, it really cuts both ways. It just means no parking at all. So if that's a valuable parking stall to a resident, then it precludes them from using that as well. But that is one possible tool. I did want to highlight that in the City of Fresno Municipal Code, it is unlawful to park a semi-truck for more than 4 hours in a residential district. And we, you know, that's where we need to look at the location. If it's on a residential street, that's pretty straightforward. If it's on a major street, I think I may have heard Jensen Avenue, then that's where the property on Jensen would be deemed a major street, not the local minor residential street. So looking at site distance is key. We actually have also at times we've installed signs along a certain area that will say no trucks over 6 feet in height, no parking for any vehicle over 6 feet in height. So that could be another solution here. And lastly, I did want to mention the residential parking district. That's another tool. I'm not sure this specific area would meet all the state of California requirements for that. Typically, the kinds of places where that's used, one is near Fresno City College, because again, right, you know, people don't want to pay for parking. They want to spill over in a residential neighborhood. So that means the only people who can park there are those who have city issued parking permits for the residents. We also have that near Fresno State, similar situation, students, you know, Bulldog football game attendees spilling, then that way they can't park there. They're subject to violation. We have that near the Fresno, the VA hospital, Fresno, our first Fresno Clinton area. But that's something we can look at. As far as calling that in, we have a couple tools available. One is 311. There is Fresgo. If you're not getting good response on Fresgo, I'd really encourage anyone to then communicate to the city, to say, you know, and to the departments, you know, if there's a specific situation, I will take that message back, because my experience, that should be going much more quickly, but occasionally, yes, we acknowledge sometimes they do slip through the cracks if they don't wind up kind of right within the right box, so to speak. we're always working to better improve that. So I'll stop there, but glad to work to be of assistance in this situation.
Excuse me, Scott, so what I'm hearing is you're gonna get the contact information from Ivanka and make a phone call to this elderly lady?
Yes, we'd be very glad to do that.
Yeah, because you know, sometimes with the whole Fresno, my elderly neighbor relies on me to do all the technical work. So that would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for the chance to participate in the discussion, and hopefully this information, you know, we're sharing and we're talking through, hopefully that's helpful to others. Maybe there's a situation someone is aware of, and that this might provide some solutions. So yes, we are glad to look at these and help wherever possible.
I see Lilia's hand up.
Sí, buenas tardes nuevamente a todas. Estoy respondiéndole a Lisa. Créeme, Lisa, que el poner el estacionamiento en rojo, lo digo porque he trabajado con algunos residentes del área que quizás tienen el mismo problema. Para los que no saben, yo vivo cerca de 2 escuelas elementales y middle school, y el problema siempre es el mismo. No tengo estacionamiento cuando llego a mi casa porque siempre está cubierto con los padres que llegan a dejar a sus niños y vienen a recogerlos. Entonces, la solución, ponerlo en rojo, sería aumentar más el estacionamiento, que te estorben más en tu driveway o que haya más irregulaciones. Hay una de las maneras que he podido yo trabajar con algunos residentes es poner su área, pedirle a la ciudad que se lo pongan en verde o ya se lo pongan en amarillo. El amarillo son 30 minutos y en verde son 2 horas los que puede estar el límite. El azul, ustedes saben que es para incapacitados o para personas con incapacidad alguna. Entonces, yo he mirado esos trabajos que han puesto y desafortunadamente hay muchas violaciones por parte de algunos conductores o residentes del área que estando en rojo no les importa. Ellos, yo lo digo porque aquí en mi casa tengo el área roja porque la pintaron, están estacionados los autos ahí. Entonces, en este caso tenemos que hablar con la ciudad de Fresno para que vengan en esas horas y den multas a las personas, pero ¿se imaginan cuántas personas podrían ser afectadas si ponen en línea roja esto? Entonces tendría que ser otro color, ya lo dije anteriormente, ya sea el amarillo o el verde, o si tienen alguna incapacidad en su casa, pues ponerle el color azul. Esa es una recomendación solamente, porque ese, como dije, teniendo rojo es aumentar más el tráfico y más violaciones todavía. Es una sugerencia que he vivido con los residentes de esta área.
Ryan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Ivanka. Hey, Scott, I had a quick question for you on the Fresno page. It talks about reporting it if it's been there for more than 72 hours. But like you said, the ordinance itself says they're not allowed to park there for more than 4 hours. So is that like, is the webpage itself not, is it like talking about different things or?
Ryan, we'll follow up on the webpage. The actual ordinance states, let's see, I'll just read that off. I've got it on screen. It shall be unlawful to place or have parked, keep or maintain any semi-vehicle as defined in 142605 on any public street, alley, right-of-way, or highway other than a state highway in the city of Fresno for a period exceeding 4 hours. When we've installed signs, we've typically shown that code section, cited the 4-hour period, and then it's subject to tow away after 48 hours.
And then the other question that I appreciate you looking into the website, Scott. The other question I had was, would that be a situation where like resident documentation or evidence could be used to document the 4 hours? Or does it have to be city verified?
Per the California Vehicle Code, that would have to be city verified, as I understand it. So the sooner it can get reported, the better, so that we can address the situation.
And the only reason I mean, we have similar requirements, but just want to make sure that
Yes.
People knew that. Thanks.
Correct. Otherwise, the vast majority of people are trustworthy, but right, what if someone said, oh, this has been here that long and here we go and cite, and then the person says, how do you know that? I've only been here 10 minutes. And so, yes, we do have to verify that period.
Thanks, you guys. Listening to the comments that Lily is making, the comments that I started off making, there's two issues going on. There's residential issues, but then the bigger issue, Scott, is the fact that let's not forget these are truck reroutes, right? So those routes are still separate and different from the issues that you see near the college or near schools inside a community. And so the reason I brought it up to begin with, because this is the space where we're trying to figure out truck reroutes. This is a topic of input that should be part of the truck reroute information that you're going to be getting under the truck reroute study. And so I'm listening to everyone and hearing two different lanes of issues that we're discussing. And then back to the solutions that we're discussing are really directed at residential issues. Fresno, if 4 hours and you're out of compliance after 4 hours of parking, it takes over here in West Fresno, unlike the rest of the city, a good 4 days before you get a response. So unless the code enforcers for the city that get reports for parked and abandoned vehicles is different, or is that a different category? Because I see abandoned vehicles, dusty trucks and stuff sitting here for days and weeks, if not months. So I'm the one telling you, Scott, the system is slow. It doesn't work. You're not going to get a response in 4 hours. So I do appreciate if there's something that the air districts and the air districts inspectors can do more quickly with heavy duty trucks, that would be great. The other piece is who at this table that we're at tonight knows how the CHP is involved, because they have complete jurisdictions over streets, freeways, streets, it doesn't matter. It's all, they have the right to be on any of our streets. So how do those state laws that they are supposed to be enforcing tie into me calling the CHP instead of calling the city ordinance Fresno?
That's a great question, Ivanka. Our team can definitely check into that with the police department versus CHP's jurisdiction and report back to the steering committee.
And I mean, I don't know how to make Fresno faster, because by the time I don't know if budget's going to allow for more folks for code enforcement, but I know they're overworked, and whether you're talking about fallen trees or situations like this, where the point that Ryan is making, if we can't give you the proof in after those 4 hours, we know that it's going to be moved by the time somebody does get out here. And that's why I'm saying, you know, the point that Ryan is making, if you can't accept the proof from the resident, it has to be the citation has to be confirmed from an agency, then that is in itself a loophole, is the timing issue. That's the loophole that's going to continue this, but it also plays directly into why there's a need for the review of where these trucks are allowed to travel. Because the moment that you're saying they are allowed to travel on these roads, it seems like every other ordinance below that is kind of just, you know, secondary, because they had the right to be traveling on that street to begin with. So I hear the conversation happening tonight, but it still seems like we're far from actually having the impact of these heavy duty trucks parking along neighborhoods that are being impacted by the truck reroutes. So.
Ivanka, I'd like to add honestly, the easiest solution for us on trucks, if there's a concern from residents about trucks parking on, you know, a street like a Jensen or maybe a California Avenue, where you have residential along the street, if that's the concern, the easiest thing for us to do is to go out and prohibit any vehicles over 6 feet in height parked on that street. That's the easiest thing.
Okay.
Because it's the truck rerouting study, you know, we'll talk about that later, but that one will be more challenging. I think it will be more challenging to enforce that than a simple oversized vehicle parking restriction. That's very easy. It's over 6 feet. There's the sign. You're parked here. It's not even a 4-hour question. It's the parking controller or the police officer rolls up. It's there. There's the sign. Here's the ticket. And if it's not gone, then within the longer period, it's towed and impounded. So yeah, we're glad we would welcome the contact and can work to address the situation.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone else? Oh, I see Lisa's hand again. I have 2 screens. There we go.
Sorry about that, but actually I agree with Scott as far as, adding signage, not only striping for this elderly lady so she can get out, but also the signage, because I know that when I talked to, I think it was Public Works way back when we were thinking about extending our red zones, they were talking 3 feet on both sides of, which would have been fine. And they said, we're going to take out a parking spot because currently we have like 3 or 4. And to us, we didn't care because we never have anybody come over and park in front of our house. So we were fine with that. But then I thought, well, no, just have the little part that, what we have now, and that's fine. But just make sure that the guys that do the ticketing, the parking police, showed up a little bit more, because I've had incidences where I've parked my car out in front of my house and the city college kids literally blocked me in, and I don't even have an inch to move my car. And I had to use like 3 hours of vacation waiting for someone to show up. And nobody from parking came, and I called every 15 minutes, guys, and no one showed up. And when the student finally showed up, it was like, oh, not a big deal. I have a right to park there. It's like, yeah, but I'm blocked in. So I feel for this elderly lady. So I think we should look into signage in certain areas.
Yeah, that sounds good, Scott.
Thank you.
I see Lilia has one comment, and then I know that we need to do a little bit of a change of a agenda flip. I think, is that the comments that I'm seeing? So go ahead, Lilia.
Sí, tomando lo de las rutas y los camiones. Yo entiendo que hay muchas personas que quizás su trabajo de ellos es manejar un camión, lo entendemos. Quizás entren a nuestras áreas residenciales con el motor, o sea, viene siendo la cabina de la máquina, pero estos sinvergüenzas entran con toda la carga hasta adentro de las residencias de nosotros y prácticamente se estacionan en la calle toda la noche. Entonces, esto, como yo le dije en la medida C, estoy trabajando ahorita con la medida C también, no solamente dañan con el peso que traen nuestras carreteras, sino también nos están contaminando. Ya bastante tenemos con todo el tráfico que tenemos todos los días con los carros de las escuelas, como para que estos pasen todavía en la noche, se estacionen con su carga pesada y estén obstruyendo no solo un espacio de estacionamiento, se avientan casi el estacionamiento completo de 4 o 5 carros. Entonces es algo más duro para nosotros mirar que no es solo ni 2 camiones, son más camiones los que entran ahí en el área. Es un problema grave, la verdad, para nosotros. Y aquí Isabel, que vive cerca del área, puede decir también lo mismo, que es un problema. Es un problema los camiones pesados que entren a las zonas residenciales. Es un problema muy grave, y más cuando hay personas que vienen viajando lejos. Yo los he mirado, que duran hasta 4, 5, hasta 6 horas con el camión prendido cuando traen el refrigerador. Entonces, eso es un contaminante también para nosotros en el área.
Go ahead, Liz. Thank you, Lilia.
I'll just see if anyone from
Gracias.
Does anyone have a response to Lilia's comment? Okay. Thank you, Lilia, for bringing that up. Amy, go ahead.
I don't have a comment. I have a question. So based on what I'm hearing from city reps, from CAR, from it seems that they are okay doing that and there's nothing that can stop them. Correct?
Maybe just real quick. I mean, if it's an idling, speaking to the boxcar trucks, I think that's definitely a tougher issue. And but I mean, that may be depending on the height of them, Scott. I mean, if you know it's more than 6 feet, if there's signage, maybe those trucks or cars are subject to that as well. Would that be right?
That is correct. If we made that decision to install signs prohibiting any vehicles parked there over 6 feet in height, it would apply to any. It would apply to right, like if it's a higher box delivery. I don't know the total height on those, but I would think a little over 6 feet. But it would apply to any and all, even if it's a resident-owned truck. Sometimes in neighborhoods we do find there's a complaint from one constituent, but the neighbor's livelihood is truck driving, so those become the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, for example, we have a few Sprinter vans, and I think the kind of standard height is about 6 feet 6 inches. And
Lilia, go ahead.
Voy a tratar de hablar despacio para no confundir al traductor. Hablando de Fresno. Fresno, desafortunadamente, en el servicio de 72 horas del estacionamiento no está trabajando como debe. La semana pasada reporté un carro que estaba estacionado adentro de un callejón. Estaba completo. Al segundo día ya no tenía placas y yo lo reporté cuando tenía las placas y después lo reporté cuando ya no tenía placas también a la misma aplicación de Fresno y al departamento de policía. Bueno, para no hacerla muy larga, el día de ayer ya el carro está parado con un gato, con unas pinzas en la parte de enfrente, ya no tiene llantas, ya no tiene nada, le quitaron parte del motor y todo el aceite está tirado en la parte del callejón. Entonces, Fresno no está trabajando como es, ni el departamento de policía. Tuve que hablar a la ciudad de Fresno con el concejal del área para que pudiera cartas en el asunto, porque esto ya iba a terminar en un incendio al automóvil. Entonces, no esperemos a que pase todo eso. Les aclaro, Fresno me bloqueó a mí por hacer más de 300 reportes en mes y medio. Entonces, traigo trabajando muy duro a la ciudad y como dijo Ivanka, no sé si la ciudad tenga que contratar más personal para el 311, porque sí necesitamos más personal, porque también necesitamos más regulaciones en las tiraderos ilegales y más cuando están tirando animales muertos en nuestros callejones y vienen y tiran televisores, cosas que están contaminando el medio ambiente y nos están contaminando nuestras vidas diarias. Ese es mi punto de vista referente al Fresno también.
Thank you, Lilia.
it's an interesting question, Scott. I don't know what the right answer, because we experienced that by our office quite a bit too. It looks like potentially stolen vehicles that have been stripped and left. That seems more like potentially a crime has occurred. I mean, is that more in the jurisdiction of the police department, or does that still fall under the city in Fresno, or what's the proper way to report those instances?
That would definitely be within the purview of the police department. So we definitely encourage contact for them. If it's just an abandoned vehicle, the city can definitely approach it from that standpoint, which ultimately is going to wind up with the boot and then with it towed and removed. But certainly if there's possibility of criminal activity on that, definitely want to get the police department involved right away.
Okay, so maybe just like when calling the police department, making sure that they understand that it appears that this car may have been stolen and stripped and abandoned, to make it clear to them that it's not a quote unquote like an abandoned car.
Correct. And having been at a number of community meetings, with my colleagues from the police department, I do know that that particular issue would fall lower just on their priority of calls that come in. Of course, they're dealing with, number one, violent crime, anything like that, that's going to take the officer resources initially, and then nonviolent crimes like, if it's a burglary not in progress, that's going to be lower down the list. We get a lot of complaints from the community about, say, homeless activity in certain areas. And again, that one's up lower. So likewise, they will respond, but I know the officers, they would ask, just patience to bear with them because they may be dealing with, a violent crime situation at the time.
Thank you. I do want to recognize that we're a little over time. I see 2 hands up, and so we'll definitely get to you, but I also want to acknowledge that we want to propose a potential change of our agenda to accommodate Nayamin having to leave a little bit early. She was going to give an announcement a little later, but we do want to try to move that up. So we can do that after this agenda item, if that is okay with the rest of the CSE. So if anyone objects to that, please let us know. Okay. If not, we can go to Lisa and then Nayamin, and then we can transition to Nayamin's trees subcommittee update. Lisa, did you just take your hand down?
Yeah, I forgot to turn off the mute. So here I am. On the abandoned car thing, it's really, really simple. If you see an abandoned car in your neighborhood and you can safely get the license plate number, you are to call the non-emergency police number to see if it's been abandoned. And if it is reported as a stolen vehicle, they'll contact the owner to let the owner know where it's at. So the owner has some time to get the vehicle before it goes into impound. Then it gets on a list of vehicles for the police to come and pick up. Because if you have an abandoned vehicle and they're taking parts off it, that's a stolen vehicle. That's just straight up a stolen vehicle. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Nayamin, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that all these topics are so important because they really reflect all the community issues. And, we would need like AB 617 to expand to all these issues because, some are related to air pollution, but not exactly. And believe me, I run the IBAN reporting network that deals with illegal dumping reports day in, day out, not only from the city of Fresno, but from the entire county and even Tulare County. So I know what you're talking about, but I'm just concerned that I in terms of process, so we don't have like 3-hour meetings or we don't run out of time of the items that have been put in the agenda. I was just going to suggest, and we can discuss it at a later time, if there's a mechanism of doing like a bike rack, if you will, of the things that are not exactly they're related to what we have in the agenda or that go beyond the jurisdiction of the air problems that we're dealing with in this space. And that maybe there's, the commitment or help from the air district and others to find other spaces in which these problems can be discussed at length and not try to rush them or cut anybody out. I know it's important, but I just had that suggestion.
That is a really great suggestion, and we'll definitely write that down, and we can even talk about it at our agenda setting meeting tomorrow.
Yep, and but if not, I'm happy to, on behalf of the Vegetative Barrier Neighborhood Grading Subcommittee, present forward to you all the recommendation of approving the request for proposal drafts that have been developed by the Air District in collaboration with our subcommittee. They went through multiple iterations. I'm sure several of our subcommittee members are not 100% delighted with every single element that is included there, but the majority, especially at our last meeting yesterday, had the consensus that there were as closely as possible to what we had recommended. The main things that we had recommended, for instance, that the mechanisms to ensure that the trees are going to the areas where they are needed, that there's going to be a way of making sure that the applicants are considering culturally competent approaches for outreach, education, and services, and all kinds of things that were discussed at length, so that we really make sure that the trees go to where they're needed the most. So I was the first person to criticize those RSPs and rip them apart like 100 times. And again, there might be things that they're there that I might not agree 100%, but I think they're strong enough for me to support the recommendation of our steering committee to approve that these are released, and that what the timeline that the Air District had discussed with us yesterday is that once we approve it, it will be just several days before they are released, hopefully early next week, and that will open up a window for the applications to be submitted. I believe it's 45 days. And then something that was very important is that we as steering committee members will have the opportunity to vet the applications, to rank the applications, and even to approve the projects before they are fully funded. So I think that was an important element that we were able to include in that language. So why we want to do this? Because the clock is ticking. If we don't do it, we're going to run out of time and we're not going to be able to spend the money. And we already lost one season where we would have been able to be planting trees, and that didn't happen. So if we continue just going over different iterations of drafts, we're never going to be 100% happy, and we're not going to have trees. So because of that, I think that I encourage all of us to consider approving these and getting the ball rolling and making sure that applications come in and we're all engaged. Everybody that is have the capacity and the interest in helping out, reviewing the applications, scoring them, and so on, can come to the subcommittee meetings. And then, we could see more trees planted this fall, hopefully.
Thank you, Nayamin. So we are trying to get approval from the entire CSC on these RFPs. So we can see if anybody objects to approving the RFPs. Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone is objecting. So I think that means we can move forward, which is really exciting to see that trees will actually be getting planted in your neighborhoods. So, yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Nayamin. And thanks everyone for accommodating the shift in our agenda a little bit. So we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the incentive measure funding follow-up. So as you might remember from our last meeting, we had a robust discussion regarding incentive measures and the potential for moving funds around. Given that some of the money that was intended for some CERT measures has not been used and could possibly be more effective if those funds were put towards potentially a different or a new CERT measure. So at our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion and definitely some disappointment expressed specifically surrounding the unused school air filtration funds. And we also heard residents express the urgent need for residential air filtration, especially with fire seasons getting longer and more intense. The CERP is your document and you all get to decide what specifically is in it and how much of the budget you would like to dedicate. So the Air District is really looking for your recommendations on how to move forward. And I don't want to steal too much of Ryan's thunder, so I will now pass it off to you, Ryan, to provide some updates on these items since our last meeting.
Yeah, Liz, never fear stealing any thunder from me. I'm sure you say it much better than I do. And so I will share my screen now. Try to demonstrate my limited technical skills. I believe everybody should be seeing my screen now. Perfect. All right. So as Liv mentioned, I think we had a really great conversation. Got some good input, hopefully maybe finalizing some of the thoughts of the steering committee on a few items and maybe getting direction on some other ones on some ideas. And so this is really just building off of what we did last month. And so the first slide, it's kind of running down what we went over last month and where we were at with discussing the budget and the few meetings where we kind of broken down the different things and how we worked with the committee on developing the incentive spending portion of the community emission reduction program and how we've been moving forward and making recommendations on shifting funds and things of that nature. These were some of the commitments that we worked with you on how we can talk about these things and make sure that we're keeping everybody updated, because the timelines on this, as Naomi expressed in regards to vegetative barriers and urban greening, are so important, and we want to make sure that all of you are very informed and up to date on everything that's going on as we get information that we're sharing it out to you, so you know what we know. So kind of the first one, so during the last meeting, we got direction from the steering committee, have an update from the schools where they're at with school air filtration. And I would love to say that after that conversation, we reached out and we got the information. We have reached out several times, but we did not get the information at where they're at with the schools. So I would have liked to have had a better update on this particular measure. But I don't. And I know during the last meeting, it was basically stated that if we didn't have an update from the schools, that we would look to shift that funding over to some other type of program. I did hear from some of the CSC members that maybe there's another option that could be explored. And so at this time, we'd love to get some feedback on, what the steering committee's thoughts are on that. We did hear back from Washington Union, which had said that they wouldn't be using these funds. But the main one that we were looking at and trying to have conversations with was Fresno Unified, and they did not provide us that information.
But it's so sad when money can be thrown at people and it's turned down. I mean, that's the bottom line. That is just like, wow, because of the systems at play here. Yeah, go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah, well, I was just going to mention that when that article was published, there was a retired teacher who reached out to me, and I say, well, there were funding from other sources. There were funding from AB 617. You need to ask the trustees. And that she did communicate with one of the trustees. I'm not going to mention the name, but the response was that indeed the school district had been purchasing the MERV filters into the existing HVAC systems, that they tried to use some of the devices, I don't know how to call it, plug-in devices, but that they were not effective. But pretty much her response was very well, I don't know, what else we can do. Still, I'm happy to hear what others think, but I think that we could give them one last ultimatum, convene a meeting, but not only with the district staff, but actually with the trustees, and tell them this is the last call. You have this money, are you going to use it? And if not, we just I don't know if tonight or at what point we can recommend where to change that money to other things, because for instance, I don't know, for example, and this might be an item that is discussed together. because I don't know what is the status of the school buses. So if they are open for the school buses, maybe we add more school buses. They were not a lot to begin with. But if none of those are going to happen, I think there's many other ways in which we can use these funds in the right way. And but in my opinion, we should try one more time so that then they cannot come and say, oh, well, we were not even aware. I don't know. They're politicians at the end of the day, so they're going to try to find excuses for their lack of action.
Nyameen, was that you're referring to somebody, the board member with Fresno Unified specifically?
Yeah, so
Okay.
a community member, a retired teacher who used to work in a school at Fresno Unified,
Okay,
reach
I
out
just
to
want
a
to make sure.
trustee.
what
Yeah,
shows
reach
this-
out to a trustee at
Okay.
Fresno Unified. And that was kind of like a very, vague response of like, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah, so I mean, that was the three options was, continue to try to work on it, try to get an update for July, and if at that point there's no interest, move the funds. There's
Can-
Nyameen's suggestion to, work with the CSC, try to bring trustees like we had way back in the beginning, when we initially discussed this and, try to work with them on maybe some opportunities. And then the third option is just continue to try to assess it through the end of the year and then maybe move the funds at the end of the year, which based on the last meeting and this conversation right now, definitely probably isn't one of the options that we want to consider.
I see Dr. Curry's hand up, and I'm hoping you'll make some comment or suggestion about those the outbuildings of the portables, like,
Yes.
yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Ivanka. So so this is concerning to me because they've had this available option for spending the money in the most correct way. So I really would like to see a sort of advocacy position taken where we actually have someone write an op-ed that refers back to the fact that these funds were really set aside to make sure that our students were breathing, safe and quality air. And that's the most important part, is that we wanted students to be safe. And so addressing what was already printed, that they've not made themselves interested in accepting this money and actually utilizing it in the way that it was allocated, is still problematic. And I would then issue a request or an option for trustees to, yes, attend this meeting, recognize the community interest and concern. And then I would request an update of what their plan is around school air filtration. And I think that those are pieces that would take a little bit of time, and I'd be willing to give them that time, but I would not be willing to let this go quietly into the night without addressing the fact that these funds were set aside for students. And if they're not utilizing it in the most appropriate way, that there should be some acknowledgement that we should not be willing to sort of let this slide, because students are being impacted they're not in school now, but some of them are in summer school. But the whole goal was to improve the air quality. These are the same students who live in areas that are already overexposed. So to have a safe place in school was a really important thing to do. So that includes the issue of whether or not these funds could be used for the portables and how they would make that happen. But I do think that we want to call attention to the fact that the money was available, it was allocated for specific reasons, and that this is an accountability issue. And that this is, again, what makes people either want to participate or not, and either have faith in good policy or not. So I would like for us to be able to sort of lead that charge, and then to follow up with whatever. If they say, yes, we're interested, then there's a timeline. If they say, no, we're not, I think that, again, we should actually publish that in a way that says these funds were allocated, they're not used. And this is the business of schools and parents and taxpayers. And so if they're not interested in using it, we should definitely move it, but we also should not give them a free pass. So I'll just end there. But
No, I think that was beautifully stated, Dr. Curry, and appreciate that. The one thing I would like to point out and make clear is there may have been work that's been done in this area by the school district. That was what we were trying to get from them. In our previous conversations, they had talked about that they had plans for replacing and updating equipment and trying to see how the funds that were in the community emission reduction program may be utilized to help in some capacity for those efforts. And that was the information that we weren't able to get back from Fresno Unified. What exactly is being done or has been done, and how these funds can be kind of leveraged in those efforts. So if I think what I'm hearing that maybe is to look to maybe set up a meeting with the CSC and trustees, to try to get that information and have kind of a more robust discussion with the leadership at Fresno Unified about what's currently being done and if there's an opportunity to use these funds, but not, like something in the near term, not months and months down the road.
Absolutely, something in the near term. And if they have done something, it would actually be helpful for them to be able to state what it is that they've done, not only to talk about their accountability, but also to push back on the perception that families and residents have that they haven't done anything at all. So it would be of benefit for them to respond. And again, they need to pivot to doing the school's work. And I think this would be helpful in refocusing them on, this is the business of keeping children safe and making safe environments. And that's exactly what we expect them to be doing.
In terms of time, I think that, that meeting should need to be scheduled I know it's gonna be hard to get all the trustees, or at least a majority of them, or the ones that represent the area in the AB 617, at least a bare minimum of them. So, but that if not, we have a known agreement of what will be the latest that we will wait to hear from them. And if not, then we make a decision of moving the money to another strategy. And is it possible to combine the discussion about air filtration and electric buses for schools, or are we in a better shape on that other strategy?
So that was one of the upcoming slides. We are very encouraged, and I'll talk about it on the future slide on electric school buses, but they have, I believe they have submitted applications for 6 school buses to electrify them. So I think there's some other opportunities with electric school buses based on some of the stuff that we're hearing for some of the school districts to move that forward more quickly. But just to wrap up on this one then, so I think where we had a lot of success last time was some of the CSC members had direct contact with some of the trustees. And so I don't know if that would be, we'd want to utilize that same opportunity. I mean, we can reach out to all of them, but at the same time, if CSC members have relationships with some of the trustees, if they could reach out to and trying to get that set up quickly.
Why don't my recommendation would be that the Air District sends an email and copy the steering committee members. Maybe we can raise our hands that know or have some sort of relationship with the trustees. So we're copied, and then we can follow up based on that initial email.
All right, that sounds good. So maybe by a show of hands, or I guess we could send out it. Let's see, Naimeen and Ivanka. I can't see Dr. Curry.
I know Lilia, for example, has a good relationship with Elizabeth. So.
Okay.
My hand is up. Don't forget me, please.
All right, there you are. All right, thanks, Kim.
Ryan, was the Orange Elementary Center also a no?
You know what? I don't.
Sí, Nayamin. Sí tenemos buena relación con ella y también con otros 4 miembros de la mesa directiva. Entonces contamos con 4, yo sé que sí.
So Lilia says
I'll get the specifics on Orange Center.
Repeat it again, Nayamin. I don't think Ryan heard you.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that Lilia mentioned that she has good relationship with 4 of the trustees.
Okay,
So if she's copied in that email, she can help follow up.
perfect. All right, I know Stephanie's taking good notes. Well, thank you all so much, and we'll get that email out. We'll try to get it out this week. Either definitely not today, but tomorrow, hopefully. All right. Thank you so much on that. Appreciate the guidance. The next one, school buses. We talked a little bit about it. One of the things that we're hearing about the challenges that some of the districts are, we focus very much on providing the funding for the buses themselves, but one of the hurdles is the fact that the program doesn't necessarily or doesn't include infrastructure for that. And so, having the buses is very important. Having the ability to charge the buses is equally important. And so, one of the things that we wanted to raise here was if there was support for including the infrastructure as part of these projects to be more of an enticement for districts to participate in this.
Question, Ryan, can you give an estimate on how much that would cost?
Yeah, sure. So Aaron Tarango is on here, who's a program manager in our incentives department.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how many buses they do. It could range anywhere from, how much trenching, how much they have to do, how much they have to work, they have to do to the yard. It's kind of hard to give an exact number, but like it's anywhere from probably, a couple $100,000 to $1 million for a large project. But it just depends what I have to do. So it is critical to make these buses work, and depends on how much trenching and have to run or whatever's going on there. But a lot of times it's probably, anywhere from probably $300,000-$400,000 to about $900,000 to $1 million, give and take. How many are they going to do out there?
Yeah,
if they're only do a 5 or 6, it's probably way less than that. Maybe
Yeah,
5
So
to
if they're gonna
$600,000.
do 16 is probably the higher dollar
That'd
amount.
be a higher
You said-
amount, yeah. So it's, it just depends on how they set up out there and what they got going on. But once we have some quotes, we can give feedback here. But until we get a really itemized quote, it's hard to give you exact number because we don't know what work has to be done out there. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I just don't. It's hard to know what they have to do out there.
No, it's okay. I appreciate the answer that you were able to give. I just thought that a dollar amount or an estimate dollar amount will kind of help guide the decision to add infrastructure dollars to this incentive right here. I do believe that is critical in order for us to be able to have electric buses, but just wanting to know for myself and maybe as well as my committee members wanted to know just the estimate amount, so we'll know what we're looking at when or if we decide to add that portion to this.
I think for Fresno Unified, if they're going to do 16 buses, if that's truly what we can get out of the whole project, you're talking max of maybe $2 million, as little as $800,000, probably something like that.
So for us to just have a little bit of a cushion, it's already 6.4 million for 16 buses. It's better to go a little bit extra just to make sure, so it won't be any holdups within the project saying that funds ran out or whatever the case.
Yes, exactly.
So I think the initial concept, Kim, would to be include this change to it, not change the 6.4 yet, and then see if we can get these projects going, utilizing those funds, and then if we do see more interest, then bring it back to the committee on then looking for, okay, where's it going to be best suited to maybe shift or add funds to this program.
So out of all the schools that have been talked to about this, how much interest is in it if the infrastructure was included?
Well, I know that was one of the big hurdles for Fresno Unified was the cost for the infrastructure was preventing, which is the majority of the schools. We have a few Washington Union and Orange Center, and then one from Central Unified.
Thank you, Ryan. I just want to say that I think it's critical. I agree with saying that we will add that, but we will wait until we have a dollar amount, but I do think it's critical if we want electric buses, if we want this to move forward. So I just want to go on the record saying that.
So Kim, let me make sure I understand. So you'd be supportive of adding this component?
I mean, I would, because it's crucial. I mean, in order for this to be implemented and looking for where to move the money, and we have spoke very highly of having electric buses, school buses. So yeah, I am in support of this.
And there's protocols too. It's not a blank check that people, I mean, there's specific, frame or, dollar amounts, for these types of projects. And so, I mean, you still have to follow all those types of things for that. So I appreciate that. So I don't, if maybe, if we could hear, from the rest of the committee, if people are in support of that, or if they have any concerns.
I do see that Ed Ward's hand is up, and also Brian put in the chat about what are those other assets that we can stack and supplement together. And the one he's listing in chat is about PG&E. So while I agree that infrastructure will be the most enticing piece, I think to sell it even better would be to know what other supplemental incomes we can get from other programs, since at a state level, we are all about going the direction of EV, and the buzz is infrastructure as part of those solutions. So I think as much as we want to make sure that that is the piece that's included, we need to also research what other forms of funding can be included with this infrastructure piece. Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you, Ivanka. I just want to say I significantly agree with Kimberly and Ivanka. Infrastructure is critically important to the success of this. We've heard many arguments in the past. It's kind of like giving someone with low income an electric vehicle and then asking them to pay the taxes on it, and they don't even have enough money to pay the taxes nor charge the vehicle. There are programs out there, but I want to remind everyone, and this goes back, I think, 4 or 5 years to the early days when we were talking. The post office bought some electric vehicles to travel from the post office in Fresno to the airport and back. And it took them 18 months, I believe, is what they mentioned, to get power in. And as important as it is to have electric school buses, it's just as important to get started. Ryan, do you know what the lead time is if we were to order school buses today? And because that's what we really need to do, is make sure that as we put these two pieces together, when school buses are available and on the ground, they have the ability to charge and be used and not just sit in the parking lot.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Aaron on that topic, but thanks, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a couple things. One is that I think talk about the cost of infrastructure. It is an allowable program under the Carl Moyer or the CAP related guidelines. And for school bus infrastructure, it's actually paid down 100% of the cost. So there's no out-of-pocket costs for the school district to do that. It's one of the allowable expenses under the CAP program for infrastructure. The next part is a lead time for school bus. There's only so many manufacturers who build these things. Maybe I think there's 3 or 4. And they're all trying to get at them right from all across the state. So right now we're hearing 9 to 14 months, as little as 8 sometimes if they have maybe somebody cancels. So we're hearing now. I know they're trying to speed it up, but it's like the rest of the world right now, right? As everything goes. So that's what we're kind of hearing. If we can maybe give an update, we'll talk to the manufacturers again and see where we stand the next couple weeks or so, and see if we get a more of a clear update, I guess. But yeah, it's probably 12 months.
Our new assistant city manager, I kind of wish he was on the call tonight. The question I have is, for the city of Fresno that is getting their infrastructure up and going for the city buses, like how long how long are the actual buses in there charging? Like, is there a way that we can collaborate with the city and have some of these school buses going back to the city yard? It's a question, it's an idea and a question. I know none of us on this call probably have the answer. But if we have other infrastructure being put in the same city for city buses, that is an opportunity for collaboration. So I'll just say that and stop there. Yeah.
On that question regarding the city buses and, let's say, for example, electric charging and such, anything that's within FACTS is a federal asset because the city is installing all of that infrastructure with Federal Transit Administration funds. So that really does constrain us significantly. If it's something that was installed with federal dollars, FTA funds, then that really limits its use. We can't use it for something outside of that. Otherwise, we wind up with a problem with the FTA and use of grant money. I hope that's helpful information.
There's an answer, but I doubt anyone's actually asked the FTA either. Like what are those opportunities, to actually speak with the people that are representing it? I mean, that's what we do. You know what I mean? Like, that's what Leadership Council is always making relationships with people at the EPA and folks on this call. So I'm just wondering outside of the box, because this whole space is nothing but a creative box.
Absolutely. And I will relay that request to our Assistant City Manager, Gregory Barfield, and also FACTS Director, Joe Vargas. I'll definitely pass that along.
Thanks, Scott.
So I see we are a bit over time. I just want to check in, I think, Ryan, you have 2 more slides left.
So, but I think as far as this, that the committee was, good with us making this change to incorporate the infrastructure to this. But at the same time, looking for every opportunity to find other programs to supplement the funding from the Community Emission Reduction Program funding. All right, thank you. Too fast. So we've talked about some opportunities to increase funding, and just kind of wanted to get the input from the steering committees on how to make these programs more useful for the residents of the communities. Understanding that costs have gone up. We've all experienced inflation, and to make these programs increase the likelihood that community members can use these programs. The recommendation that we've heard from the CSC was to look at maybe increasing some of the funding amounts. And so just wanted to kind of confirm with you on moving, updating some of these. So for example, on fireplace replacements, that's with natural gas or with heat pumps, raising that amount up to $4,000. And then for incentives for EV cars, increasing it from where it is right now, which is $9,500, up to $20,000. And for example, we're seeing some positive stuff from for example, Chevy and some of their newer cars that they've been trying to keep the cost, for example, with the Bolt, at in the 20,000s, which with this incentive, the individual would only maybe have to pay several thousand versus tens of thousands of dollars. So from this is definitely something we talked about last time, and so is the committee supportive of looking to make these changes to the programs? I see Ed's hand.
Yeah, Ryan, I wanted to go back to an earlier comment that I made, and that's that it was brought before CARB a while back that incentives for EV cars for the low income folks were a problem because the 1099s that required them to pay taxes, they in many cases weren't even able to make that 1099 payment to own that new car. And I wonder if we could consider adding some of that money to that process, so the car truly does become a vehicle that they can afford to just get in, drive off on.
Yeah, so you're talking about the taxes on that, Ed?
Yes, yes. And it traditionally, from my understanding of the many meetings with CARB I've listened to, that has been an issue, that the 1099 winds up being several $1,000s on a new small electric vehicle, and then the families can't afford that.
Well, and this program wouldn't be only for new cars. I mean, it is open to other ones. It's for example, we have the Drive Clean the San Joaquin program, where people can get up to $9,500 to replace an older car, 2006 and older vehicle with a newer car, plug-in hybrid, or electric. And so, Aaron, I don't know, in the cases where the vehicle is less than $9,500, do they still have to pay the taxes on that?
Yeah, whatever incentive they get, they have to pay taxes on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're still responsible no matter what. So even if it's under the $9,500, they would be responsible for the tax portion.
Yeah, it's
So-
still seen as income. So yeah, they have to pay taxes on that. We couldn't.
So to put that in perspective, though, Ryan, respectfully, if they're given a $10,000 car, it's going to cost them $800 of which, in this economy, in the inflation that we're seeing, $800 could be the difference between eating and buying medicine or not doing that. So that's why I bring the subject up. I think we're at a real difficult time economically, and if we want this to fly, we need to help our families that are struggling. It's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ed. So I think with the higher dollar amount, it's not to say that they have to use the upper, understanding, the tax implications. There is a range. It just broadens the range that cars community members would be able to look at, I think, and definitely, through the process, there's an education process, and making sure that people are aware of all of that is really, really important.
Ryan, I have, or maybe this is a question for Aaron. I don't remember this little piece. Any of the fundings that's for the 617 incentive for the electric vehicles, does that stay within this boundary, and it is a separate funding application program than the general rebate electrical vehicle program?
It would be, if we were to increase it, it would be. Right now it's kind of one program we want them to apply, and then we would see where they're located at and use this funding source for it. We don't want to confuse everybody by creating separate programs. It makes it tough. We could. I want to make sure that, hey, you apply right here, and we will do the rest for you, type of thing.
Okay, so you apply in one place, and depending on your address and where that address lands.
That's correct. We found that it's easier for the applicants than try to do a bunch of separate applications.
So for example, for like the lawnmowers, we got the program that's open right now. But if you live in Fresno or Shafter within the boundaries, you're eligible for a higher amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in this scenario, we'd have to designate, okay, add to the existing portal, these different things, then it would show up in our system that they're eligible for that higher amount.
And the other question I have, if we increase the funding for the EV cars, which CERT measure is getting reducted? deducted?
Well, I think the first thing is, so we have pretty good size dollar amount in the program. I think it's, once we get it going and we see how much interest we get, then we would probably bring it back with, requesting recommendations on, expanding the program, adding funds to it, but getting the program going first.
That doesn't make sense to me. I need to know, I need to know the money before I get a program or buy a car.
No, so we have, Aaron, what's
my question was just, if we are increasing from 95 to 20,000 for the CERT measure of increased incentives for the EVs, then what other bucket of money is getting reduced to increase this bucket of money for cars? Like, that doesn't have anything to do with once the program starts. I just need to, like, what am I then having to make another decision on what other measure that might be impacted because we're moving the money? Anyone else on this call not understand my question?
Hey, Ivanka, maybe, oh, this is Brian from Carbon. I think maybe you would just be able to offer less cars if the overall money was the same.
Okay.
But like you would see, it's just one thought. I may be wrong, but that's.
We have $1.6 million in this program right now.
And that's not going to change or
initially, yeah. I mean, if we saw, say we open up the program and in 2 months we go through $1.6 million, then yeah, that's where we're going to bring it back to you. That's where I showed that the kind of the outline that we're bringing regular updates to the committee, where we're at with spending the funds and the different programs.
So we're staying in that same range of funding then. Okay,
initially,
got it.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
And the same would be true for the fireplace change out program as well. So, yeah, I mean, if people are okay with us making those changes, then we'll go ahead and make those changes. If anybody's opposed or has concerns, if you could please share those.
I have to go get my charger. My computer's running low. I like the idea of, I do like the idea of increasing the amount, because if you cannot buy a near new, my concern is for folks that are already in a low income bracket of purchasing a car. What we don't want to see happen is if you're buying a used, I don't know how much the Air District has as far as a stipulation of just maybe it's just based off of mileage. Okay, you cannot buy a used EV with so many X amount of miles above this because then it's too old. That is a concern of not wanting to see people buy new technology vehicles that are too old that they're then going to have to turn around and start putting a lot more money into. That is not really available. The same kind of along the same lines of the concerns that Ed was bringing up, like looking at the bigger picture than just the cost of the vehicle.
Yeah, good points. And I mean, that's, definitely a conversation that we've been having with some of the dealerships that we've been working with, when getting people into electric vehicles. Thankfully the battery warranties on many of these vehicles are good. So if there are any issues that they can be repaired, and what we're hearing is a lot of these batteries are intended to last between 20 plus years. And in addition to that, there's also reduced maintenance cost for those types of vehicles in general.
Ryan, this is Ed again. You brought up a very important point, warranty. And I think that any of these vehicles that we fund ought to have a minimum major component warranty so that our families aren't looking at, whatever the cost is of major components. Certainly, I'm not talking about brakes and tires and things like that. I'm talking about the major components that really could break a family.
Yeah.
And that may need to be part of that 100%. Thank you.
Mhm. Thanks, Ed. All right. So I think we got general support for moving those forward. Appreciate it. And then the last slide, we had already talked about the school bus infrastructure. Thank you so much for your guidance on that. The last one is indoor air filtration, and to look to add this. And this would be one where we would have to look to add funding to it. It would be a new measure entirely. This is specifically indoor air filtration for homes, and, air purifiers for residents within the community. And if the decision from the CSC is to add this measure, then we would then look to identify the funding source for this and the amount, and then this would have to go to the district's governing board to make that change to the South Central SERP. But I think it's a great program. One of the things that we took back from that last meeting that we had with the Fresno Steering Committee was the concern that this program, if it was decided to move it forward, that it wouldn't be available for this fire season. And so, shared that back with our executive officer, Samir Sheikh, and I'm happy to share with all of you that on Thursday, we are looking to get approval for a pilot program that would allow residents in low-income disadvantaged areas to be able to get a air purifier for their home. And definitely want to work with the steering committee members and others if that program is approved on Thursday to get the word out about that. And we'll have more information about that later on. But I thought that was really appreciate Samir for thinking outside the box and listening to the concerns that was raised by all of you and others about this very important topic. But for this for the SERP, that's a separate from that, but hearing that is also an interest of the committee. So if you'd like to hear from you if there's interest in looking to add that to the South Central SERP.
So that, just to clarify, this SERP was not actually, it hasn't been added yet. Like
Okay, yeah. So
about to be up for a vote.
So the pilot program that I'm talking about has
Yeah.
nothing to do with AB 617. It's using completely separate funding sources for that program, for that pilot program. This program would be very specific to only South Central Fresno. It wouldn't be available to the broader valley. And so what we look to do is work with you to tailor that program to provide the most benefit and be most successful deployed in the South Central community. So that would go through our normal process of working with you, whether it's in steering committees or the community steering committee members to develop that program, in which then we turn around, we submit it to CARB. Hopefully we get that approved quickly, looking at Brian, and then we can move forward with implementing that program.
But
So,
does this measure, I know this came out of the conversation of feeling like we're not getting anything with schools. What about another way of protecting folks through their in-home air filtration? So again, where's the bucket of money for this one if this new CERT measure is approved?
Yeah, that's I think what we were initially thinking was to have the conversation with you, get the support for moving it forward, and then I think we bring back recommendations on areas where we think maybe to start with, maybe we could shift funds over to that. So the thought would be that maybe if this was the general support, support for this, it would go to our board probably in August. And then in July, we could talk a little bit more about, what that funding source is. Hopefully we've had that conversation with President Unify. We have more clarity on where that is at. And so So in July, when we talk next week at the agenda setting, that would be one of the ones that we put on there for discussion and suggestions.
Is anyone else on, are we just tired? Is the team seems kind of quiet.
I have a comment,
Yeah.
Ivanka, and that's, so this filtration is maybe different for different homes. In some homes, it may be just a filter in the existing system in the home. Are we talking about portable air filtration? And here's the point I want to make. Today, it may not be critical, but it's going to be critical if we have fires, and it's going to become more critical during harvest time and we have dust blowing. And I think that we need to give those issues need to be thought about so that we can proactively protect our families in the community. So I'm supportive of it. I understand Ivanka's concerns, and I would argue that we need to look under all of the stones to see where money could be gotten as we move forward. But I'd like to see us move forward on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And that's definitely one of the things, like we would tailor this program with the feedback from the steering committee on whether it's standalone units, whether it's filters for existing HVAC systems, what we think would work best.
And is it also, Ryan, just a question of you need to get the process rolling of a timing issue, or is tonight's vote by the committee like add the measure, yes, we're going to find the funds, or you need to get this rolling so the ideas, the actual plan is written and you know what you want to submit to CARB, even if we don't know what the outcome with the schools.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Final
So
outcome.
this step is, do we have the support? Does the steering committee want us to look to add this? And then, because that takes work on our end, then we have to go through, we have to look through all the different measures and be like, okay, where are the possible like funding, the funding available from maybe other measures, and bring that back, and then have a discussion probably in July about how much, like how many units, how much as far as dollar amount to go into that, and then in August, then take it as a kind of what we've always done with the CERT measures. We try to keep them kind of general. We don't get into all the specifics because we need to work with the steering committees on developing the program itself, because we need to tailor it for how it's going to be successful in South Central Fresno. So this is just, do you want us to work on adding this as a measure? Understanding that it's going to require work in between now and like July when we talk about it more.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have on this. Is anyone else?
And then the next question is, do we have support? And so understanding it is 7:29, maybe just if there's any concerns, voice them. Otherwise, we'll just take it as that there's support for it. Thanks, Ed. All right, thank you. I see a thumbs up. Thanks, Ivanka.
Is there anyone like absolutely opposed? Like I needed just, I'm sorry if I took too much time asking questions to understand the process, but sometimes it's the process that gets us more confused. But if there's nobody just like outright opposed, I think we can move on.
Okay, great. I will stop sharing my screen, and then thank you all so much. Appreciate the feedback, the direction.
Dr. Curry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is not on that last subject, which I do support, but I just wanted to get an update, and maybe if it's not possible this evening, that it comes out later, on the status of our work on an MOU with the city regarding notification to families and residents in this AB 617 area around new industrial sites. And I would then ask the question, is this just with the city or can it be expanded to the county? And I'm basing that on the fact that the Regional Environmental Compliance Site or Center that's being relocated from American Avenue right into the 93706 zip code, where we already know is heavily polluted, that happened without much community engagement or community awareness. And the fact that they mentioned there were 100 sites that were looked at, and this site was selected because it's zoned for this kind of facility, is a repeat of what we have been talking about with the Elm Avenue rezone and with all of the discussions, at least a decade ago. So I'm curious if we are moving towards an MOU with the city, and then how can we expand it to the county? Because these kinds of, this pattern of quote, non-engagement and just dumping stuff into our community is unchanged. And we can see that it's not going to fix itself. And even when there's a policy or a zoning that would prohibit this, we can see that it's still being undermined consistently. So
I appreciate that,
love to
Dr.
hear.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
no, thanks for Dr. Curry. And yeah, it doesn't look like Greg or Jennifer on tonight. And they did message us and said that they were, as many of you have mentioned, they've been working this week on the budget, and so that they wouldn't be able to attend. But I think that would be a good conversation that we can add to the July, maybe as an agenda topic. And yes, we are still working on the MOU. We had the subcommittee meeting a few weeks back, and the direction that we got was that the input from the steering committee was going to be taken back to the city manager for consideration. And so looking to hear back from them on that topic. In regards to the county, in an effort to be honest and transparent, our focus has mainly been on the city, and trying to establish that. But understanding that there has been recent discussion of building and constructing in the county area, understand the desire. So adding it to next month's meeting, I think would be good.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments before we wrap up this agenda item? Okay. Oh, Lilia, go ahead.
No es comentario, solamente es una aclaración y dar las gracias. Me llegó un paquete que trae toda esta información de cambia tu máquina de césped y todo lo que trae aquí informativo. Solamente quiero clarificar algo. La máquina que dice que es cambia tu máquina de equipo por una de césped, por una de gas, por una eléctrica, ¿ya no es de batería o es la misma?
I missed part of it. Can you hold up the flyer, Lilia?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the flyer in regards to the incentives available. That's the one talking about the South Central AB 617 and things that are available and kind of guiding people to where they can find out more about the grants. And Lilia, what was your question again?
Es que nada más quiero saber si la máquina de césped es de batería o es eléctrica? Eléctrica para nosotros es traer el cable enchufado y andar manejando la máquina.
It
Y
is,
batería es
yes, it's a
recargable y se
battery, like
conecta a la
the ones that
máquina. O
we've seen the
sea, ahí
most
hay
are
una
batteries,
confusión
but
en esa
the,
palabrita. ¿Es
the
máquina de
plug-in unit,
70K cambiarla por una eléctrica o una de batería?
yeah, it applies to both. I mean, you can get funding for either one.
Ok. Te digo porque yo tenemos distribución, Familias en Acción tiene distribución de alimentos todos los viernes y agradezco esto a la oficina de San Joaquín Área y Contaminantes por mandarme el paquete porque trae bastantes hojas y estas se van a distribuir el viernes. Entonces quiero clarificar eso para que no confundir a la gente cuando me pregunte y tenga la respuesta para ellos. Gracias.
No, Lily, we appreciate that so much. And, you know, we talked about we have grants for the extended outreach, Lilia, and I know you're doing this already, but you know, if you're going to continue to do it, you know, we'd be happy to work with you on, you know, a contract and you know, providing
Familias en
funding.
Acción está trabajando en eso. Muchas gracias. Familias en Acción está trabajando en eso, en cada viernes poner una maqueta grande con información de todos los beneficios o recursos que tiene la comunidad. Y esto es algo que nos beneficia no solamente al área, sino a todos, porque está reduciendo las emisiones que nos están contaminando. Entonces es algo que también a nosotros nos favorece y pues agradecemos el apoyo de ustedes también para esto, ya que hemos estado trabajando muy bonito con las máquinas que nos donaron. Y aunque seguimos necesitando baterías para las máquinas, pero vamos a seguir trabajando con esto. Y gracias nuevamente también a Ed por la trailita. Tenemos una buena noticia. Hay una posibilidad de que la ciudad de Fresno en su inventario de camionetas nos done una de la ciudad de Fresno, aunque esté usada, como le dijimos, no importa, nada más con que arranque y jale nuestra trailita que nos donó Ed. Gracias.
It's great news. Thank you, Lilia.
Thank you, Lilia. So our next agenda item is to go to standing updates, but we are wondering how the CSE feels about moving those updates to email. Does anyone object to hearing those updates via email? Okay. So you all receive those updates via email. We can now move on to.
Sorry, Liv, when you're saying the updates, I was using this screen as going over like our agenda, what those updates. Are there any updates, Scott, for the truck reroute?
Yes, I can just briefly share. So we've been gathering final signatures. We anticipate that formally kicking off in July. The total period for that study is 18 months. So we want to try to keep that on schedule, start July 22, and then we'd be finished by January 2024. And as we close in on the starting date, we'll certainly provide the committee with all dates for community engagement and the schedule, work products, and so on.
Okay, and you said gathering the signatures from council members or?
No, the signatures, they involved more signatures through, for example, UC Merced. We're doing well on the Air District side. Seems to take a little bit longer in the, you know, we still have a number of pandemic practices in place and DocuSign and so forth. Just a lot of people signing off. We're down to the last couple.
Okay.
So very, very close, and we will notify the steering committee and the subcommittee of schedule, and as I mentioned, dates and community events and such. So looking forward to it.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you for that update. And it does seem like, you know, these updates are definitely important and they often get pushed to email because of the rest of the agenda. So depending on what folks think at the agenda setting meeting tomorrow, maybe we can start to dedicate a little bit more time to those on the agenda. And so I will transition us now to presenting the action items. As you remember, this helps develop transparency and accountability. And so I will pass it off to Jem, who will share her screen and walk through the action items from tonight.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thought y'all were gonna get a break from my voice tonight, but I'm just gonna quickly go over the action items. We have quite a few tonight. Give me 1 second while I share my screen. All right, so as usual, as we go through them, please feel free to clarify or make any corrections. That way we can accurately capture these. And I have a lot of windows open, so feel free to just unmute yourself. So our first action item is provide greater clarity on the language on the signs that is more culturally inclusive. I think this was specific to the idling trucks. And that's for CARB to revisit their translation. Are there any questions or modifications for this action item? All right, next one, we have City of Fresno will connect with resident who is experiencing the idling park trucks challenges. And I believe that's for the City of Fresno to follow up on that, specifically the resident that Ivanka was lifting up tonight. Next one, City of Fresno will follow up on the webpage to ensure it accurately reflects the ordinance. Again, around the idling trucks, we'll tidy this up. So I believe there's some misalignment with what's said on the webpage and the ordinance. So the City of Fresno will follow up on that piece. And the city will also follow up with CHP's jurisdictions around idling and abandoned trucks, and then perhaps provide an update to the CSC on what would be the appropriate steps for folks to reach out to the CHP or local police regarding these issues. Next, the City of Fresno will add signage to prevent more trucks from parking idling in front of the residents' homes. And then we have create a bike rack for topics that are not urgent but require follow-up further discussion. So this is something the Air District and we facilitators will follow up on. Next, we have invite Fresno Unified School District trustees, Board of Trustees, to attend a CSC meeting to discuss school air filtration. And the Air District will also CC the select CSC members who raised their hands in the outreach email. I believe we took that note off, not on here, but we do have a list of the members who raised their hands. And then we have next action item, look into other programs to supplement emissions reductions efforts. For example, the electric school buses and infrastructure. And this one is a last one, so we'll flesh this out. Dr. Curry so kindly gave me the details on this piece, but updates from Land Use Subcommittee and the progress on the MOU regarding this piece. Are there any questions or suggested modifications for any of these action items tonight?
Can we make a note, Jim, on the vehicle issues that we at least will look at warranty and tax issues for the residents within our community?
Is this for the EV, Ed?
Yes.
Okay. And specifically look into warranty and tax issues with EV.
And the change that we, I think, agreed on from 9,500, moving it up.
Oh yes, we've noted that on a separate piece. But yeah, we definitely have, I believe the Air District is recording all of those proposed amendments on a separate document.
Thank you, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ed. All right, any questions or any other action items you'd like to add? All right, I will pass it back to you, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to start wrapping up this meeting now. And so because we moved the day of this June CSC meeting, it conflicted with the regular time for our agenda setting meeting. So that the agenda setting meeting is now moved to tomorrow, Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We invite all of you to come and share your thoughts on what you would like to see on the agenda moving forward. We do also recognize that not everybody can attend these meetings at this time. So if you are unable to attend but have some suggestions, please feel free to contact the facilitation team or the Air District so that we can incorporate your feedback. And I think I'm passing it off to Ryan to discuss our July meeting schedule. Possibly.
Hey, Jim. Yeah, I'm not sure why we put discuss July meeting. You know, we are going to have a July meeting, and I can't remember if I have to apologize for not knowing. I see Stephanie with her thumbs up.
I'll hop in here, yeah. And some of our CSCs, for example, in Stockton, since July, I think tends to be a time when lots of folks take time off for the holiday, and our Stockton meeting was close to 4th of July. We had investigated potentially for some of the communities looking into moving, you know, just having the next meeting in August, but I think it sounds like we'll go ahead and move forward with our regular July meeting if there are no objections.
That does sound right.
That's
Are
what I
you
was
going to
going
add
to say.
anything? Okay. Okay. And so I think maybe we can pass it to Ivanka for any final comments before we move on to public comment.
Nope, I don't have any more comments. Thanks, you guys, for letting me co-host tonight.
Yeah. Great job tonight, Ivanka. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. So we will move on to public comment. This is an open space for any community announcements or any members of the public who've been at this meeting and would like to share. So are there any members of the public who are here tonight or anybody who has any final words to share with the group?
No comments on YouTube.
Okay.
Yo sí tengo uno, perdón, perdón que no alcancé a levantar la mano. Solamente quiero una sugerencia para mañana en caso de que no alcance a llegar porque todavía no salgo del trabajo, salgo hasta las 5. Que pusieran en la agenda alguna regulación para que la ciudad trabaje un poquito más de cerca con la policía acerca de las quema de llantas que hacen estos conductores que desafortunadamente no dejan más que más aire contaminado en nuestras áreas. Entonces, hemos reportado esto a la policía, entregamos videos y no hay algún cargo porque los mismos conductores al día siguiente vuelven a hacer la misma. Entonces, quisiera ver si pueden poner eso en la agenda, donde haya una regulación, donde haya multas más severas para estos conductores irresponsables, para que nos apoyen para hacer esto, porque en nuestras comunidades ya es bastante contaminante tenemos como para tener llantas quemadas en todas partes. Es una sugerencia solamente.
Yeah, no, that is a very important suggestion. And we can put that on the agenda for tomorrow's agenda setting meeting. Any other comments?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for staying on a little bit later. Ryan, do you have any closing remarks?
No, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. Good meeting tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Oh,
Thank
you. Thank you so much, Harder and Company. I don't often thank them, but they always do a tremendous job.
Gracias a todos.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Gracias a la
Thank you.
traducción.
Have a good night.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches a todos.
Liz, can you stop the recording on Zoom? I can't do that.
Yes.
And YouTube.
YouTube.
Thank you, interpreters. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Tanya.
Tanya. Bye,
We're
Jose.
still live.
Thanks, Harder team.